we want to ensure that while we are producing, growing crops, you are not exposing the environment to, all forms of negative climatic events. You don't want rising rainfall, too much cold, maybe the temperatures reducing more and more in cold seasons, and then of course the humidity levels to rise, and then leading to rainfall that might affect farming.
Welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast, NextGen Agro Talks podcast. And today we have a very interesting guest. And as usual, my name is Oladapo Folarin, and with me is my regular host.
Folarin Okelola, it's a pleasure to be with you guys again. Welcome to another edition of our podcast. It promises to be interesting. Follow us.
Thank you very much. And today we've got, like I said, an interesting guest who is in the food sustainability space. But we'll allow him to, introduce himself.
All right. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be interviewed or to join your live podcast. I'm very, very, very much grateful for this opportunity. I'll introduce myself quickly. I'm currently a senior lecturer at the Food and Markets Department, um, Natural Resources Institute, University of Greenwich, here in the UK, and I majorly lecture at the MSc Food Innovation and Food Safety program at the Natural Resources Institute. Also, I also conduct research in sustainable food processing, cutting across agro processing, um, alternative proteins, post-harvest loss and waste reduction, and then narrowing it down into crops. I work mostly with fruit, vegetables, and then with cereal and root and tuber crops. It's been a journey anyway, coming to this space and working in this field. I think it all started, at the University of Ibadan, where I, did my master's in food technology. I think that was where the spark started. The whole interest in sustainable food processing. I worked on a topic then at the University of Ibadan under the supervision of Professor Awo. He's still very much present on effect of packaging on shelf life enhancement in harvested tomato. So I wanted to see, because of course you see it, in the market time and time and again, baskets of tomato produce wasting, perishing, and yet that is during season, and off season you realize that prices go up, there is scarcity of this commodity, and so that sparked my interest. I was, can we do something to just ensure these crops don't just get lost just like that, and then leading to price hikes and all of those things, malnutrition, scarcity, increase in cost. So I decided to, let me take a step and conduct something that will be of impact. So that was where my interest started. So I worked on that, and then I moved on to the University of Venda in South Africa. Again, I was at Limpopo region, universities at Limpopo region, and it has quite a tropical, subtropical climate, and then that gives it the edge in the growth of tropical crops. So one of the crops that they grow, it has lots of banana plantations and banana farmers in that region, and so that also sparked my interest. All right, there is lots of bananas being grown in this place. What can we do? Aside selling, harvesting grain, unripe banana and exporting them. Can we also come up with something that the farmers can also work with, for those bananas that do not meet the standard? Of course, you know that there are marketing standards, the standard A, standard B, standard C, depends on the targeted market. Yeah, depending on the targeted market, international market, national market, and of course, a local market and the reject. So is there something that we can do to ensure that aside the markets that they're focusing on for the raw fruit, what can we do to also add value, to those harvested fruit that doesn't meet the standard, and in quotes, regarded or classified as reject. And then that also sparks a continuation of the sustainable food processing aspect. So I worked on processing of harvested bananas into flour, and then using organic sources, to turn the fruit, to flour. And it opened the whole world of, opportunities and information. And then I think ever since then, I never looked back. Continued my postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Venda. I went on to Cape Peninsula University of Technology for another postdoctoral research fellowship award. And then before I moved to the Agricultural Research Council, ARC in South Africa, working with the Institute of Tropical and Subtropical Crop as a senior researcher in agro processing and post-harvest technologies. And there it was purely I was working in the field, working with farmers, working with food processors, and also combining it with research findings, basically translating research findings into something that would be beneficial, basically for the food system. And after that, I then moved to the UK, so and landed at the University of Greenwich, where I'm still, actively involved in both teaching and research.
Very, very
Wow,
interesting.
that's yeah.
Yeah, quite an interesting story. And you've actually answered my first question that I would have asked you, because you already told us about your journey, and it's an interesting one. So I think I'll just join into the second question, which partly you have also answered. But for the benefit of our audience, I would want to ask you to like define sustainable food value chain, and why is it a critical concept in today's global food system? So can you just briefly give us a definition and the importance of the sustainable food value chain system?
All right. I think for the sustainable food value chain, thank you for the question. We know the different chains in the food value system, from production to processing, and then distribution, and then retail, and then consumption. So the sustainability part there is, can we ensure that we have a food value chain that contributes positively, to a green economy? Can every aspect of the value chain not result in resource depletion, but resource renewal? The farmers, what are they doing to ensure that there is sustainability in the environment? What are they doing to ensure that the soil that they use, the resources that they use, is not depleted? What are they doing in terms of the greenhouse gas global emission? Are they contributing, to climate change, or are they, ensuring that resources are preserved? What is their energy utilization? What is their energy use? Are they working in terms of reduction in energy consumption, which is quite expensive? if it's so large, and the resources that they use, is it energy friendly? So for each of this um, value chain across the food chain, what ways or what means are they using to ensure that the environment is not harmed, and to ensure that they give value both to the final consumer, in the sense that even the product that is developed, the product that is processed, is even nutritious. So by what means, when we also come to the processing aspect, what are the equipment that are being used? Are they energy intense? Do they also contribute to global greenhouse gas emission? Then at the retail state, there is this issue of food miles. The food miles now, looking at the logistics system, we're talking about what is the best supply system that will contribute the least to global greenhouse gas emission. Is it air travel? Is it rail travel? Is it road travel? And then we start looking at it, step by step, in the mode of transportation, the air transportation system. How much does it contribute to? Research has shown that logistics, transportation of food produce through the airways is the most expensive, and so preference is now given to the rail system and also the road system. And we also see the road system, fossil fuel, being involved. So there is a kind of shift in that aspect. And then looking at the global supply chain, which way can we ensure that the global supply chain is not a contributor also to the global greenhouse gas emission? Can we ensure that the global supply chain is not so long, such that you get too much energy intense or too much energy intensity or too much energy consumption across that chain? Can we break it in such ways that less and less energy is being used? And if that is also done, you realize, the system then works more on the local producers, and then that makes them more, they contribute more, because if you want to then tackle those long distance food miles, first of all, you will want to reduce this importation and exportation of food produce, and that will make you now depend more on the local farmers. So all of this is what leads to what we call the sustainable food value chain, and it's all encompassing. And I think that is what I would define it as, or summarize it as.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, how has the focus on sustainable food evolved in the UK over the past years, and what's driving this shift?
There is a lot. There is a lot. Yeah, there is a lot that is really really pushing this shift in the UK. First of all, there is the issue of the climate change. Of course, we know the location of UK. It's an island surrounded by lots of water bodies, and so we want to ensure that while we are producing, growing crops, you are not exposing the environment to, you know, all forms of negative climatic events. You don't want rising rainfall, too much cold, maybe the temperatures reducing more and more in cold seasons. And then, of course, the humidity levels to rise, and then leading to rainfall that might affect farming. So all of this, because at various climatic seasons, different crops are grown. So we need to be careful in such a way that the farming methods, the farming equipment, the farming techniques, does not lead to negative consequences to the environment. And then in the UK also, the focus is also for food security, within and the country, and because the government policymakers wants to ensure that at least the nation is food secure, so they're driving and encouraging, that the farmers, the food processors are using, techniques, that will enhance production, benefit the environment, and deplete, dependence on high energy use, while also, ensuring that the environment remains clean, remains natural, and it's not really exposed to negative consequences. So it's been evolving, and we are beginning to see shifts, policies, different regulations, um, the EU regulations, European Commission, EC regulations also being embraced. Some of it in the UK, because the European Commission, the EC regulations, they are very big, on these aspects, sustainability across the food chain, across Europe, which UK used to be a part of. So many of the regulations have been embraced. The greenhouse gas levels of greenhouse gas emission to be used, concentration of fertilizers and pesticides to be used, the type of crops, the types of seeds that are, grown in the country, of course, to safeguard the environment, to safeguard the resources, and to ensure that definitely Europe and the UK, their food are secure. And the current shift right now is also less and less emphasis on proteins from animal sources. Everybody's now moving towards proteins from plant sources, because growing or rearing a single cattle seems to be very energy intensive, very, very energy intensive. Rearing the cattle, keeping the cattle warm, keeping the cattle free from all forms of diseases, the producing the cattle feed, the grazing, all of these, they have impact on energy, they have impact on the environment. And so there is now a gradual shift. Why should we always get um, protein from animal sources? Why can't we also shift to less energy intense sources, such as plants, which can easily grow, with less water use, less energy use, less chemical pesticides and all of that use. So all of this shift has, been showing some results, in the sense that the country is beginning to work towards uh, uh, a sustainable food system. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. But before I ask the next question I was supposed to ask you, just taking it from your a point from what you just said, do you think if we shift completely from animal protein to plant protein, we'll still be able to get the same amount of nutrients that we need?
This is the question that, yeah, I don't want to go into it. The right activists, the animal farmers, they've really, really been asking those questions. And of course, consumers also, you know, they've also been asking the same question. Can we get complete protein from animal sources while we live? For now, we don't have the complete protein from animal sources. Some of them, sorry, from plant sources. Some of the plants, they have the complete amino acid, but the concentration, is still low compared to what can be found in animal protein. And then there are also other nutrients, such as the minerals, the ham, which, well, we are beginning to discover where to extract this, from other sources aside animal, but this is now synthetically made rather than from animal sources. So to go to answer your question, what we are looking at, and for me, that the drive I would prefer is a coexistence, of both using animal protein and plant protein in our diet. And then we get balanced meal. We can't work with one to the isolation of the other. Even for instance, the vegan diets, you realize they are under strict dietary needs such that those nutrients that are missing out because of their dietary choices, are not left out. That they have complete nutrients in, their dietary requirements. So there is a strict dietary control, to what they eat. So to me, the best part of that is there has to be a coexistence. So, but the overemphasis on the animal protein source should kind of be reduced because of the impact on, the environment, the impact, on energy utilization, the impact on resources, and even the cost of production. So that is what I will answer to that a question, that there needs to be kind of coexistence between both, because nutrients from both sources are needed by the body.
Sometimes I'm sure some of our listeners have heard food loss and food waste. Can you please clarify what the difference is between the two, and also at what level of the food supply chain does each one of them occur?
Okay. With the food loss and food waste, there are also issues that, a global problem cutting across the food system. So for the food loss, in the food chain, in the food value chain, the food loss occurs at the production stage. Things that goes on in the farm, and then when we come to the food waste, basically at the consumption stage, and also at the retail stage. So the food loss most times primarily focuses on the raw materials utilization, harvest, post-harvest activities, and what is done to those raw materials. So the ones that are not utilized, that is what we call loss. So the farmers, if for instance, let me take for instance bananas. Each country has an export standard, for the fruit. Now, before the farmer decide, for instance, to export banana to the UK, he would have, regularized himself with the standards by both the grocery stores and even DEFRA, Department of Environment and Food and the regulatory body for environment and food in the UK, they would have gone through the regulations to see the standards that they need to meet, for their fruit. And then, for instance, if the farmer grows his banana and the length of a finger is not up to the size of what a grocery store like Tesco needs, to that farmer, that finger is lost. He will not, you know, export that finger because, of course, Tesco will not accept it. This is not our standard.
Mm,
Do you understand? However, that doesn't mean that banana is bad. That doesn't mean that banana is spoiled. Yeah, we're losing banana
yeah.
just because of the height. And sometimes just because of the length, just because of the color. Maybe it's had a sun scorch and then there's a sunburn showing that it is yellow and yet it's still not ripe. So the farmer is not going to export it because the color is already yellow and the banana is not ripe. Tesco will be like, what's going on here? We want green unripe bananas so that we work out how it's been ripened or we ripen it ourselves and sell it. So those losses that occur in the place of production, We call that food loss. And when it then comes to the place of consumption, it also deals with the processed, the final product. And then when they are discarded, either due to different forms of, human activities, labeling issues, human choice, and maybe damage during logistics, during transportation, those processed products that are discarded, due to any of these mentioned activities, we term them as food waste. So I think I'm trying to make it as simple as I can.
That's yeah, thank you very much. And then my next question, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's more food loss in some part of the global south, and there's more food wastage in some part of the global north. If that's the case, how do you think this can be mitigated or minimized? And do you think technology has a role to play as well?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. It's the imbalance now between both poles, both sides of the poles. In the global south, they're facing food waste, and then the food loss in the global south, and then in the global north, it's food waste. Yeah, so you're very, very much right. In the UK, in the US, in Japan, and China, the problem that they are currently facing is not food loss. The farmers are sophisticated. They have the equipment. Yeah, they have the equipment. They have the resources. They go into full-time, real-time farming from planting to harvest. They already have what it takes. They know, what's going to happen to the crop. They know when the crop is going to be harvested. They already have markets for distribution. So food loss is so at minimum, in the global north, because they've been able to tackle, the issues of wastage. The logistics and the transport distribution system is very, 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 very far ahead and well developed. You have the cold chain supply. You have the temperature regulated supply system for the different types of commodities, and then tracking it's very much, progressing and technologically advanced. Blockchain is coming into it, AI is also coming into it. So this advancement has really helped to reduce food loss, in the global north. So farmers are not really, really threatened by that. Although here and there is little here and there, but that's not the big issue. And then what they are now grappling with, I wouldn't say it's the farmers, it's we the consumers. It's a big issue, because for the global north, we will say there is to a large degree food security nationally and, at home. So we have household food security, and there is the national food security in the global north. People, cost of living, it's not so difficult for someone to get a meal to eat. You can walk into stores and shops and, can easily get a potato for less than a pound. A milk supply is always there and not expensive. So people get food easily and readily to eat. Um, but this cannot be said to be the case in the global south. Not for all countries, but majority, just like you said, majority of the countries in the global south, there is still the issue, huge issue of post-harvest loss. We don't have so many commercial farmers in the global south. Um, Farming is still highly, highly done at subsistence level. still very much focused on ensuring household food security. Not less. There's a less focus on the national food security, and of course, since they've not embraced commercial farming, there's less focus on every other aspect. After you plant your produce, nobody's really thinking about the harvest, how much more the post harvest, and then the processing. And so, because they just think, oh, I would just farm half a hectare of land because I want to just provide food for my family and maybe sell some of the harvested produce and I get some, small income. However, in the global north, that is not the case. You have hundreds of acres of farmland, commercial farming system, hundreds, thousands of acres of farmland for, single crops, mixed crops, and targeted both for national and international markets. So this divide has led to different problems for the different sides of the pole. And now, because there is huge food loss in the global south, you realize the harvested produce hardly reach the consumer. There is enough that is produced in quotes in countries where they are produced, but between production and consumption, ooh, there is a huge, huge waste. 60 60 to 70% loss is recorded in the global south, cutting across countries from Asia to Africa and some parts of South America, and that is huge. So because the harvested crops doesn't get to the consumer, it doesn't get to the consumption stage of the food value chain, you know prices is affected. There is scarcity of the commodity. Nutrients are not normally met in the diet. And then why do you then expect the consumer to waste the expensive agricultural produce?
Mm,
Yeah, the scarce agricultural produce. So automatically there is less food waste because of these circumstances. Meanwhile, the reverse is the case. The supply chain here is perfect. It's almost close to perfect farming system. They've been able to tackle those post-harvest losses, and so the food is readily on the shelf. So the consumer gets it at a price that is affordable. So they buy whatever they like and stock their houses, and they don't even care whether it's there. And they look at it. This is almost not good. This color has changed. I don't like this color. I
mm,
don't like this aroma. The labeling is showing me it's almost getting to the date that the food is no longer needed. So let me throw it away. And then, yes, boom, we have the food waste issue over here. Wait, you can't say that in the global south. For him to get that product, he would have spent a lot. And so he buys what he wants. There is no room for
mm.
waste. Yeah. So that is what is going on, between both sides of the divide.
Thank you very much. So, from what you've said, do you think there's an intersection? Do you think both sides, can learn something from each other in order to be able to reduce or eradicate food loss or food waste, as a case, maybe?
Yeah, I would say there are some positives. I would say there are some positives, lots of positives. For instance, for it's part of what educating the public, the consumers, currently ongoing. That there's an NGO, the WRAP, WRAP in the UK, that is doing a very beautiful job in creating awareness, of food waste and its effect, globally, because it's in terms of global greenhouse gas emission, it ranks number 4. Yeah, it ranks number 4. Yes, it's that bad. It's just we are now beginning to let people know. Yeah, it's another elephant in the room. People don't really until you go to the landfill site. Where garbage waste are disposed. You realize how much effect. food waste in the global south is causing to the environment. You see methane gas, being released to the atmosphere in dump sites where food waste are deposited in the global north. So it's becoming a big issue. So awareness is now being created. I think they said after US and China, food waste can be is the third largest country if we want to equate it to landmass. That is how bad it is. Yeah, that is how bad it is. So awareness is now being created, and the focus, of course, there's the focus on the retailers, the retail side, and then there's also the focus on the consumption side, the consumers. We are now trying to, educate the consumers by what you want, especially for perishables. For dried stored produce, of course, you can, or for dry products, you can buy them to keep them for a long time. But for perishables, because they are the highest contributors, bread, milk, fruit, veggies, they easily get spoiled, and so they are easily discarded. There is also a small catch here because people think when a vegetable, for instance, shrinks, they think you can't use it and they discard it. That the vegetable has shrunk because the leaves looks like it's now sleeping doesn't mean the vegetable cannot be consumed. Yes, it's just lost a moisture. That's just what happened. And some nutrients, yes, quality wise, it might not be perfect, but it can still be used. After all, we dry vegetables. So some of this education, a consumer realizes that the fruit, has different shades, different colors, and then, for instance, avocados, when it becomes too soft, you think, all right, the avocado has gone bad. I'm going to discard it. Not really, can still be consumed. Um, and then the labeling issues, the best before and the use by dates, which we've kept educating our consumers that, one is related to quality, which is the best before, and one is related to safety, which is the use by. Yeah, because after that date in the use by, microbes can start multiplying, and it is safe not to consume that product. But the best before, that is the quality. After that date, it doesn't mean the food cannot be consumed. It just means the quality starts reducing. You might not get equal amount of nutrients after that date, but the food can still be consumed after 1 day, after 2 days, depending on the type of product. Some 1 week, just depending on the type. So we are encouraging consumers. And then when they purchase the commodities, how do you store it? Up to that aspect is very much important. When you're storing your produce in the fridge for perishables, sometimes there are already stuff in the fridge, and then you still storing new fresh produce. What we advise is the first produce in or that has been stored should be the first that should be consumed. And so
Mm,
by that means you are, the last produce, you're still keeping it while the one you have stored for a long time, you're using it before it becomes, what is it, spoiled. And then we also try to encourage consumers. The impulse buying, of course, it's not their fault. The bug of buy one get one free, the on sales, issues, and the increased volume for discounted, produce. Some fizzy drinks, the higher the liters, the cheaper. So rather than getting a smaller volume, at a higher price, you get a higher liter at a cheaper price, and you end up not consuming the whole stuff. and then you discard it. So you're contributing to it. So these are some measures, that we are uh, educating. And in the retail side, the retailers are also embracing it. You get to some grocery shops. They have what we call the wonky produce. Wonky produce are the produce they get from suppliers that might not be up to standard, but then the commodity is not spoiled. So you could have wonky fruits that might not be as the grade A fruit, but they still retain their quality, and then they sell them at cheaper prices. And policies are now coming where the government is now contemplating: should we still continue with this labeling system? Can we have a better labeling system that is less confusing and will reduce to waste? So the global north can learn from consumers' attitude in the global south. The global south, you buy what you want to eat.
Yeah, yeah.
That is the take home I want to bring in here. You buy what you want to eat because you don't have it's expensive on its own for you to now spend extra, for what you don't want. So in that aspect, attitudinally, in terms of the consumer side and consumption side, I think we the consumers in the global north has we have to learn from the global south. And then in terms of the food loss, there is a lot that the global south has to learn from the global north. The whole farming system, the whole mindset about farming, the whole attitude to farming, government policies to farming, infrastructural issues, regulatory concerns. There need to be some overhaul and a lot that the global south can learn from the global north.
Say thank you. But let's talk about the role of food processing. Is it a bad thing or something essential for sustainability?
All right. For me, I would say I'm not happy with the way the social media is portraying that word processing as though um, it's all negative. I think that is where we, on the food systems or in the food aspect or in agriculture or in agro processing, needs to come out more and do the talking. It's just like you living uh, medical issues, for a lawyer to tell you what the medical issues is all about. There's going to be lots of misrepresentation. Because, for instance, if you define what really is processing, it's turning, raw materials, food raw materials, or, raw commodities into acceptable, nutritious, you know, and safe, commodities that is loved by the consumers. I'm just trying to paraphrase what processing really is. So, if that is the purpose of processing, where really is the bad thing there? Number one, you want to you turn grains like maize or some of these legumes or cereal, into breakfast cereal. You wouldn't want to taste ramen on your breakfast cereal. Okay, the vegetables, for instance, everybody loves the leafy green. We also have to be careful because yes, in the global north here, we bringing in good safety standards. There's lots of regulations backing it. Farmers are constantly being audited. Looking at their dose levels for pesticide residues. And safety limits for microorganisms. But that is the duty, or that is the reason why these commodities are processed. Raw milk from cattle, it has loads and loads of microorganisms. listeria easily jumps into it, and that is number one cause of food poisoning. So we need to process it, or convert it into a safe product, a product that will last longer on the shelf and still be nutritious for the consumer. So processing, it's number one beneficial. However, different modes of processing, could reduce available nutrients in the final commodity. And I think that is where social media, they've lashed on. They're not reporting the whole picture. Because if you just pick on one aspect, and they say, for instance, breakfast cereal is ultra processed, that is a source of dietary fiber. You need dietary fibers in the body. You have to consume your breakfast cereal. And then you could then supplement it with other commodities if you want other nutrients. Um, Fermentation. Without fermentation, where are we going to get our yogurt, which makes the gut microbiome, the bacteria or the microorganisms in the stomach to start dancing? They love it. That is what makes your gut microbiome to be nourished. It's fermentation is wine is produced through fermentation. Bread, even cheese, beautiful products that the consumers enjoy. So we can't just lash on one aspect, which could also be worked on, and which of course people already know what to do, or some consumers are even aware that if I want this nutrient, this is where I go for, and then use it to uh, just as the fad word, and to just destroy the whole activity that processing does, for the raw commodity. So definitely processing is highly, highly, highly beneficial. Highly, highly beneficial.
Mm.
If we want to also define what processing is, or one of the activities that you could call processing, cooking is also processing. So imagine a world where you don't cook your meals. All the meals that are available are just eaten raw. You can just imagine that kind of world. All of those aroma that are unlocked, all of those savory meals that we enjoy. Where are we going to get them from? They are not all from the raw produce. You have to apply a means of processing, to that material to make it savory, to make it enjoyable, to make it flavorful, and to also release some nutrients if they are not processed. For instance, during fermentation, bound nutrients, bound aromatic compounds that gives it that beautiful, aroma, and of course influences the flavor. They are released, when the product undergoes fermentation. The same thing for cooking. Yes, there is also the loss of some nutrients. Sometimes we also make up for this through fortification. So there is a give and take in the processing, but I wouldn't say it is bad. I would say it is good, and there are some downsides which shouldn't make us to paint the whole picture, as bad.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anyasi. So, as we wrap this episode up, I would like to ask you, what is the one most important change you hope to see the food system in the next decade?
For the food system in the next decade, I want to see that the issue you also pointed out, the balance, you know, from the global north and the global south in terms of the food loss and food waste, a kind of evening out where in the global north, food waste, it's no longer one of the top 10 contributors to global greenhouse gas emission. And then in the global south, post-harvest loss is reduced to a minimum where there is national and household food safety. In the next decade, if that can be achieved, it will really, really be something that will really, really excite me because it will involve every player, in the food system to conduct research, to bring food policies, to become actively involved, to be intentional, government looking out for the people, farmers doing things that, will make food more available, everybody being conscious of their role. So that aspect, it's one thing that, yeah, I would say is um, uh, yeah, a take home, and which ultimately leads to what I would say food security, both nationally and at household level. Again, it shouldn't be an issue that we should be talking about in this century, but the data still stands. One in eight people, about almost 800 million or 100 billion people, or 1 billion people are food insecure. So that is an issue. That is an issue. So in the next decade, if that number should drop, because the problem is not the availability of the food, the data says that the food is there, but then the whole, between when the food is produced and getting to the consumer, I think it's where the issue really, really rises. So if that aspect, which just like the first point, global south and global north, they can learn from themselves and even out that, space, I think these things will be sorted out.
For our listeners who are keen on making sustainable choices, what is the one key piece of advice you would offer them regarding their food consumption and purchasing?
What I would advise them is they should make choices that are healthy, make choices that, when they are consuming a food product, delivers whole that is wholesome. The nutrients that they get uh, is whole. They have a balanced a diet that contains everything, and as much as possible, and then have sustainability, in mind. You don't want to deplete the resources from where these products are obtained. It is possible, in the global north, more and more solar power is being used, on equipment, farm tools. We have majority of, the countries in the global south are in the tropical regions, and so they've got lots and lots of, energy from the sun that can be used with less effect, on the environment, and energy becomes even very, very, very cheap. So um, if everybody push for that, if the consumers push for that, I think even the farmers will become more intentional in their action, and in embracing those change. So their choices shouldn't just be basically on site, what they see, the color or the taste, but then should be informed based on the nutrients, that they can obtain from, the food. And then they should also look at, of course, the aspect of sustainability. And then this very last point, which I also, encourage my students in the classroom, I recruit them to become food waste police at home. So so whoever is listening, I'm going to recruit you to join us. If you're in the global north, join us to enlarge the number of the food police officers that we are having at home, to help us to reduce food waste, so that it will no longer be among the top four, even the top 10 contributors of the global greenhouse gas emission. Our environmental system, to a large extent, should not be destroyed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayase. Yeah, so this has been very interesting, very educative. We really want to appreciate you for, giving us your time to be on this episode. So I would like to thank our listeners as well, and we hope that you join us in the next episode as well. Uh, that's goodbye from me, Dr. Okelola.
I must thank you for the exciting, the educative podcast today. I'm sure we need to come back again to talk more about this topic, which is in my own view very very important. We need to do more enlightenment. We need to also join the food police and make everyone a food security officer. Thank you for this very wonderful session. And I think from me also, it's a bye. And of course, looking forward to seeing you, our guest, again soon. Thank you.